Attar is my guide, Attar is my guide. By the grace of Allah, Attar is my guide. My murshid has changed millions of lives. The prophetic sunnah, he is revived. The leader of the Sunnis, he is our pride. By the grace of Allah, Attar is my guide.
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidil Mursaleen. Amma ba'd, fa'a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. As-salatu wassalamu alayka ya Rasulallah, wa ala alika wa ashabika ya Habiballah. As-salatu wassalamu alayka ya Nabiyallah, wa ala alika wa ashabika ya Noorallah. Dear Islamic brothers, dear viewers and listeners of Madani channel, welcome back to another episode of the Silsila, Discourses of Attar. At the beginning of the Silsila, make as many good intentions as possible to gain maximum thawab and rewards. For example, I will listen to the Silsila for the pleasure of Almighty Allah Azza wa Jal. I will note down the important points and try to practice upon them. I will try to encourage them amongst my family members, my spouse, my children, and even in my society. In this manner, whatever other good intentions you can make, do so to gain maximum rewards. There are many benefits, countless benefits of reciting durood and salawat upon Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. One beautiful hadith is mentioned in Al-Qawlul Badi', the summary of which is that the beloved master, the owner of Jannah, the knower of the unseen, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has stated, that person who recites salawat, durood or salutations upon me 50 times every day, I will shake hands with him on the day of judgment. Subhanallah. Sallu ala al-Habib, sallallahu ta'ala ala Muhammad, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Dear Islamic brothers, dear viewers and listeners of Madani channel, continuing from our last episode regarding the circumstances of the grave, of the graveyard and those kind of incidences, a man once had a routine that he would come into a graveyard and he would sit down. Whenever any funeral came, he would take part in the prayer, janazah salah. And in the evening, he would stand at the gate of the graveyard and make the following dua, the following supplication. O people of the grave, may Allah Azza wa Jal grant you comfort, have mercy on your poor state, forgive your sins, and accept your good deeds. That very person has narrated, one evening I came home without completing my normal routine of the graveyard. That is, I returned without making dua for the deceased people. That night I saw a large number of people in my dream. I asked them, who are you and why have you come? They replied, we are the people of the graveyard. You had made it your routine that you would present a gift to us before returning home every day. I then said, what was that gift? They replied, it was a gift of du'as. Subhanallah. I then said, okay, from now on I will resume the sending of this gift. Thereafter, I never stopped this routine. Subhanallah. Dear Islamic brothers, dear viewers and listeners of Madani channel, from this we have learned that the deceased recognize those who come to their graves and they receive benefit from the du'as, the supplications of the living. When the gifts of Esal-e-Sawab stop arriving, then they are aware of this and Allah Azza wa Jal grants them permission to go to the homes and request for Esal-e-Sawab. On page 650 of volume 9 of Fatawa Rizviyah Sharif, Al-Hazrat, the Imam of the Ahl Sunnah, the reviver of the religion, Imam Ahmad Raza Khan, alayhi rahmatur rahman, has stated, it is mentioned in Gharaib and Khazanah that the ruh, the souls of the believers, visit their homes every Thursday night. On the day of Eid, on the day of Ashura, and on Shab-e Barat, Laylatul Bara'ah, and they stand outside their homes. The souls, they call out in a loud and sorrowful voice, "O people of my home, O my children, O my relatives, please do a favor upon us and give charity with the intention of Esal-e-Sawab for us." With regards to the immediate blessings of Esal-e-Sawab, Allama Ali Qari Rahmatullahi Ta'ala alayhi has quoted Shaykh Akbar Mu'inuddin ibn Arabi Rahmatullahi Ta'ala alayhi was once invited somewhere for a meal. He saw a young man eating, about whom it was famous that he had spiritual insight and that he even had insight into paradise and hell. As he was eating, suddenly he began to weep bitterly. Upon being asked the reason for that, he said that it was because his mother was burning in the fire of hell. Shaykh Akbar Mu'inuddin ibn Arabi Rahmatullahi Ta'ala alayhi had recited the Kalima Sharif, Kalima Tayyibah 70,000 times, and the reward of which he donated in his heart to the deceased mother of that person. Immediately he began to smile, and he said that then he saw his mother in paradise. Dear Islamic brothers, dear viewers and listeners of Madani channel, have you seen that young man? He could see the state of the unseen through the means of his spiritual insight. The situation of the deceased completely changed as the result of the Esal-e-Sawab that was donated by Sayyidina Ibn Arabi Rahmatullahi Ta'ala alayhi. The hadith that mentions the excellence of reciting Kalima Tayyibah 70,000 times is as follows. It is the saying of the beloved Rasul Sallallahu Ta'ala alayhi wa alihi wasallam that without doubt, whoever invokes and says La ilaha illallahu 70,000 times will be forgiven by Allah Azza wa Jal, and for whom it has been invoked, that person will also be forgiven. Subhanallah. So we too should try to recite the Kalima Tayyibah 70,000 times at least once in our lifetime. Those people whose loved ones have passed away should also recite this Kalima Sharif and present the reward to their deceased ones. It is not compulsory to complete this recitation of the Kalima Sharif in a single sitting, not necessary, but it can be completed a small part at a time, in intervals. If it is recited, for example, 100 times daily, the entire amount will be completed within 2 years. So like this, make your calculation. It has been narrated that dreaming of a deceased person in a state in which they are angry, ill, or no clothes on their body, this indicates that that individual is afflicted with adhab and punishment. Therefore, if anyone sees a deceased Muslim in this condition, he should convey Esal-e-Sawab for that Muslim. In this regard, there is a faith refreshing and informative question and answer on page 139 of the 561 page book entitled Malfuzat Ala Hazrat Rahmatullah Ta'ala alayhi, which is published by the publishing department of Dawud Islami called Maktabatul Madina. The question is, Your Eminence, a man saw his deceased daughter in his dream in such a state that she was ill and she did not have any clothes, and he has seen this dream many times. The answer: if the Kalima Tayyibah is recited 70,000 times with Salat ala Nabi, that is Durood Sharif, at the beginning and at the end, and if the reward is conveyed, then insha'Allah Azza wa Jal, it will become the means of salvation for the reciter and the one for whom the reward is conveyed. And the reciter will receive double the reward. If he conveys the reward to 2 people, he will receive triple the reward. In this manner, the reward can be conveyed to millions of Muslims, even to all Muslim males and all Muslim females, for which he will receive reward accordingly. A man saw his deceased brother in a dream and asked him, "What happened after your burial into the grave?" He answered, "A man approached me with flames of fire, and if the one who made dua for me would have not made dua, then he would have thrown this flame at me." Dear Islamic brothers, dear viewers and listeners of Madani channel, from this we learn that the deceased Muslims are benefited greatly from the du'as and the supplications of the living. In this regard, it is reported and stated on page 397 of the 419-page book published by Dawud Islami's publishing department, Maktabatul Madina, entitled Madani Treasure of Blessings, that the Holy Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa alihi wasallam has said, "My ummah will enter their graves with their sins, but will come out of their graves without sins, as their sins are forgiven by virtue of the du'as of the Muslims." Subhanallah. Sallu ala al-Habib sallallahu ta'ala ala Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. It is mentioned in the world famous book Sharh al-Sudur by Imam Jalaluddin Suyuti Shafi'i rahmatullah ta'ala alayhi, that Sayyidina Imam Sufyan bin Uyaynah rahmatullah ta'ala alayhi has stated, "When my father passed away, I wept bitterly. I would visit his grave every day. Then with the passage of time, I began to visit less. Then one day, my deceased father came into my dream and said to me, 'O my son, why is there this delay?' I asked, 'Do you know of my coming?' He replied, 'Indeed, I know of your every visit. I used to become very happy upon seeing you when you visit my grave, and the deceased individuals in the neighboring graves, they were also pleased by your du'as. Thereafter this dream, I began to visit the grave of my deceased father on a regular basis." Dear Islamic brothers, dear viewers and listeners of Madani channel, we have learned that the deceased ones are pleased with the visits that they get, with the du'as that they receive, and the Esal-e-Sawab that is conveyed to them from their relatives, from their friends. In fact, they wait for their relatives who do not come. The blessed Rasul sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa alihi wasallam has stated, "The condition of the dead person is like that of a drowning person, in that he anxiously waits for the dua, the supplication of his mother, his brother, his father, or his friend to reach him. And when the dua of anybody reaches him, then according to him, it is better than the world and everything that it contains. Allah Azza wa Jal bestows the thawab, the reward, gifted to the deceased by their relatives in the form of mountains. The gift of the living is to pray for the forgiveness of the deceased." Dear Islamic brothers, dear viewers and listeners of Madani channel, truly fortunate are those sons, especially, who visit the graves of their parents. However, remember this ruling, that if it is not possible to get to the graves of parents or others without stepping on other graves, then Fatiha must be recited from afar. This is because it is recommended, it is mustahab to visit the shrines of the pious saints rahimahumullah ta'ala, or the graves of the parents, but it is haram, in fact prohibited, to step your foot to step on the grave of any Muslim. It is not permitted, according to the Islamic sacred law, the Sharia, to carry out a haram act, a prohibited act, for a mustahab and recommended one. The Imam of the Ahl Sunnah, the Mujaddid, the reviver of the Ummah, Al-Hazrat Imam Ahmad Raza Khan, alayhi rahmatur rahman, has written on page 524 of his volume 9 of Fatawa Rizviya Sharif that it is necessary to take into regard when visiting a particular grave if there is an old part to it which should not have been made by demolishing any grave. If access is only possible by walking over other graves, it is not allowed. Stand on the pathway at a distance, focus towards the particular grave, and then send the Esal-e-Sawab. A question which was presented in the court of Al-Hazrat Imam Ahmad Raza Khan, alayhi rahmatur rahman, in this regard, along with its answer, is being given. Listen attentively. Question: is it permissible to recite the Holy Quran or a Panj Surah in a graveyard sitting beside a grave? The answer: reciting the Holy Quran from memory or by looking is permissible in any way. That is, as due to the recitation, blessings descend there, and the heart of the deceased gains comfort when it is done for the pleasure of Allah Azza wa Jal. Do not sit on any grave, nor step on any grave to reach the particular grave that you want to get to. If access to a particular grave is not possible without stepping over other graves, then it is prohibited, it is haram to go close to that grave and recite. Just recite the glorious Quran from a distance without stepping on any other grave. Sallu ala al-Habib, sallallahu ta'ala ala Muhammad, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. A pious friend of Allah, a saint, rahmatullah ta'ala alayhi, saw his deceased brother in a dream and asked him, "Do the prayers of the living reach you?" He replied, "Yes, I swear by Almighty Allah Azza wa Jal, it comes in the form of gleaming attire which we then wear." Subhanallah. Dear Islamic brothers, dear viewers and listeners of Madani channel, we have learned that the supplications, the du'as and Esal-e-Sawab we carry out reach the deceased Muslims in an extremely beautiful form due to the mercy of Almighty Allah Azza wa Jal. Therefore, we should continue the practice of Esal-e-Sawab for our deceased relatives, in fact for all Muslims. It is mentioned in the world famous book Sharh al-Sudur that when a person performs Esal-e-Sawab to the deceased Muslims, Sayyidina Jibreel ala nabiyyina wa alayhi salatu wassalam places it on a gleaming tray and takes it to the edge of the grave. He stands there and he says, "Oh, the one in the grave, your family members have sent this gift, accept it." Upon hearing this, the deceased becomes very happy, and the deceased in the neighboring graves become sad because they are deprived from that gift. Alhamdulillah Azza wa Jal, we have seen many benefits in sending Esal-e-Sawab, in making dua of forgiveness, of maghfirah for those who are in the graves, whether it is our family members, whether it is any other Muslim. This act we must continue for our own benefit and for the benefit of our family members, our friends, those who are Muslimin, those Muslims that we know or we do not know. May Allah Azza wa Jal grant us the ability of understanding His beautiful deen of Islam, and grant us the enthusiasm for preparation of our own qabr, our own grave, to make it comfortable so we may get success in the grave and in the hereafter, inshallah ta'ala. Ameen bijahin nabiyil ameen, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Sallu ala al-Habib, sallallahu ta'ala ala Muhammad, sallallahu alayhi wasallam.
Attar is my guide, Attar is my guide. By the grace of Allah, Attar is my guide. My Murshid has changed millions of lives. The prophetic Sunnah, he is revived. The leader of the Sunnis, he is our pride. By the grace of Allah, Attar is my guide.